All right, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to get started using Adobe Photoshop. It is very, very simple. It's very easy to do. The first thing you're going to want to do is go down here to your Start menu, simply go to the folder that is labeled Adobe, and whenever you scroll down, you'll see there's a bunch of different Adobe softwares we have access to. The one we are going to be using is Adobe Photoshop. All right, whenever you click on that, it'll take an extra second, but it will open up on your screen. Once we get this open, we can either create a new file or we can open an already created file. For the process of these, we've already collected a number of different lessons, so we are just going to open the files. All right. If you simply click on open, it's going to open to the last folder that you were opening a file from. You should be saving all of your stuff to the your OneDrive, so that way you can access it on any computer. And then I made a folder for 2022 Photoshop lessons. We'll open this up, and then I have my first lesson in here. So we can just double click that and get it open. All right, so that's easy enough. Now we've got this file open. Now we got to figure out what everything in here means. All right, off to the left, you will see that there is a number of tools. All right, and this right here is your toolbar. It is filled with all kinds of useful stuff, everything from paint buckets to crop tools to spot healing, you name it, there is all kinds of stuff, and we are going to learn how most of these work. But just to get yourself familiar with it, you can always change up how your setup looks. If you click these little arrows up here at the top, you can adjust how your tools are set up and how they're shaped. You can also click and drag and move menus around. This is something I don't recommend doing a whole lot. But if you do move something, if you move it back, you'll see that fun little blue section is going to pop up. That's how you can attach it back to wherever you started with. But the first thing that we're going to learn how to do with this is going to be how to zoom. It is very, very easy, but all you need to do is simply come down here and select your zoom tool. It's this little magnifying glass. If you click and drag, all right, you'll see that it will zoom in and out on an area. You can also just simply click and it will zoom in. If you right click, you can do a fit to screen. There's a number of different ways that you can use this. If you hold the Alt key, it will zoom out. All right, and that's with the Alt key, A-L-T. So yeah, that's your zoom tool. It's just an easy way to maneuver and to get around. If you hold the space bar, you can go through and you can drag. This is actually called panning. It's not dragging. It's called panning. That you can pan around within your image, wherever you need to be looking on your canvas. Again, that is if you hold the space bar. You'll see that your your little icon will change to being a hand. But continuing on, there's all different kinds of methods we can use for this. We can turn off this scrubby zoom up here at the top, where you can highlight an area and then it'll zoom in on that area. Personally, I don't care for that method, but whatever works for you. But moving along, excuse me, we're going to go ahead and get into how to use some of your different adjustments. So if we take a look, I'm going to go back to my movement tool. This is just kind of your generic selection tool. You can get familiar with that if you need to. But the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to brighten up this image. All right, again, it should be pretty straightforward. It's not meant to be anything too wildly complex, but down here in the corner, we need to make sure that we have the rose layer selected. This ribbons layer is going to come into play a little bit later, but the first thing that we're going to do is brighten up this rose. So with this layer selected, we are going to come up to our adjustments panel right up here at the top. And then what we are going to do is select the brightness and contrast icon. Now, if you're going across these, you'll see that there's a name that pops up there at the top. All right. You are looking for the brightness and contrast, and it should be the very first icon in this section. Once you find that, go ahead and select it. And what you'll see is it's going to add a layer for us down here. And now with this, we can go through and we can adjust this little slider. You'll see that we're in the Properties tab now. We can adjust this slider to brighten, darken, adjust our contrast. We can do all kinds of things with this. For right now, honestly, we're just going to make this, ooh, that's a little washed out. High 90s is probably where you want to be. Somewhere right about there for your brightness. And now the contrast is going to bring out your, not necessarily your shadows, but where your colors change. And we're going to want to bump that up just a little bit. You'll see that you're getting rid of some of that gray in the backgrounds here. Anywhere from like probably 15 to 25. If you want to play around with it, figure out what you like. I kind of like that. That should work for us. But all that we did was, adjust this brightness layer. And if we needed to make adjustments, we can always come back to it by simply selecting that layer. Let's see, what else do we want to get into? At this point, if you haven't done so, you're going to want to save. All right, you want to get into the habit of saving and saving often. We can just simply come up here and we can hit File Save. If you want to change the name of your file, you're going to want to save it as, or do a File Save As. So we can just hit Save. And now we don't have to worry about, any of our work being lost. The next step that we're going to get into is sampling a color. Again, this is meant to be pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But what we're going to do is turn on this ribbons layer. You can see that I have it selected, but there's nothing here. All right, so what we need to do is hit this little eyeball down here in the corner. All right, this is going to turn on and turn off your layers. We can do this with any layer. So you can see that we can turn on and off our effects. We can turn on and off entire layers. All right, but from here, we are going to sample a color. So if you're sampling a color, all that means is that you are going to take that color and save that color somewhere. You're going to use it again later. This is pretty simple to do as well. And a couple of things that you'll notice. All right, I'm going to drag this down here just so you can see this color swatch up here in the corner. But we're going to use our little eyedropper tool. All right, and you can see from the image here, or from the little preview of how it works, that we're going to use this to select a color. So now I've got my eyedrop selected, and you'll notice down here that it is currently set to yellow. All right, that same yellow can be found up here in this little color swatch. So now what we can do is we can come into here, and we're just going to take one of these blues. All right, doesn't really matter which one. You can see that there's a little bit of texture in here, but this will be fine. So I'm just going to click on it. You'll get this fun little wheel that pops up. And whenever you deselect, you've now selected your color. This can be used in a variety of different ways. We can take, say, this purple, and we could do something with like this pinkish purple, or we could do something with the red and pink from this flower if we wanted to do some color matching or anything like that. But for right now, we're just going to use this blue. All right, because what we're going to do is we are actually going to make another ribbon down here. Yeah, so we've got that saved. Before we move on, I want to show you all how you can edit your preferences. So sometimes whenever you go to do measurements or whenever you go to draw things out, you're going to need to make a series of selections using a bunch of different tools. So there's a couple different ways we can edit this. We can either go up here to Edit, and we can come down here to Preferences, and we can just open up the general preferences, or we could have just simply hit Control K. Either one will open up that window, or this window that we're going to check out. So, boom, here's what we're looking at. Again, we could go to this by simply going up to Edit, Preferences, and then I'm just going to select General for right now. So now in here, you can change a ton of things, but please be very cautious about what you're changing, or at least be knowledgeable about what you're changing. For today, all that we're going to change is the units and rulers. All right, all that this does is we're going to change what units we are looking at for our rulers. Right now, they are set up in inches, which you guys should be familiar with, but we're just going to simply change this to being in pixels. All right. Once you've gone through and done that, what we're going to do is just go ahead and hit OK. If you wanted to go back and change that again, you could just simply go up here to Edit, preferences, and then if you look right here, there is that little units and rulers bar. We can select this, and I'm just going to change it back to being in inches because that's just what we're going to be working with. It'll make your life a little bit easier. And we're just going to go ahead and hit OK. So if you ever want to change what you are working with, that is how you can do so. Oops. So continuing on, what we can do next is we are going to set up we're going to make a separate little ribbon here. All right, now to do this, we need to make sure that we are on the ribbons layer. So make sure that that is selected. And then we are going to go up here and we are going to grab our marquee tool. Now, if you click and hold on this, you'll see that there are a variety of different types of marquees, whether it be single rows or it could be rectangles, circles, what have you. We are going to simply work with a rectangle. All right. And what we're going to do is we are going to come out here and we are going to make a rectangle roughly right here. Your sizing does not have to be perfect, but something that's about 2.5 inches to about 3/4 of an inch tall. So you can see as I'm moving this, I can get my values to pop up. All right, so if I click and drag again, all right, I can set it to, right there's about 2.5 by 0.75. There we go. Now, if you don't get that exactly, that's okay. But now what we're going to do is we are going to go through and draw with our brush. So we've already selected our color from before. So now we can come up here and grab our brush tool. All right, your brush tool might be a different size than mine. To change that, there are a couple of different ways. We can go up here to this toolbar up here at the top, and we can click and drag to get our different sizes. It is measured in pixels currently. You can change how that is determined, but that's a whole mess. But you can do it this way. You could simply right-click out here anywhere. So again, just right-click anywhere on your canvas, and it will come up, and you'll be able to have all of your different options. Or if you just want to change the size, you can use the bracket keys on your keyboard to go through and make those changes. Again, that is the bracket keys. They're like the row above your enter key. But you can use those as well. And now you can see that as I start to draw here, I'm going to start filling this in. If I get near the edge, you'll notice that I cannot draw outside of my marquee. All right, whatever selection I have, that's the only place that edits will be made. All right, so make sure that you keep that rolling in the back of your brain whenever you're trying to do some cleanup or anything like that of an image, that we can go through and we can do it just like this. All right, so once we've gotten this far, the next thing that we need to do is deselect this little selection area. We've used our marquee to go through and do this. So what we need to do is go up here to our select menu and just simply click deselect. All right, or you could hit Control D for the shortcut. All that's going to do is get rid of that little selection, and now everything is open and available to use. And if you take a look over here at your ribbons layer, you'll notice now that this little box that we added has been added down here to this corner. So again, we should be able to turn this on and off as we go. So the next step that we're going to do is, since this has a fun little cutout up here, to make it look like a ribbon, we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to cut out a little triangle of this. So what we need to do is select a hidden key or a hidden tool. So now up here underneath our lasso tool, this one is more of a freehand tool, and we want something that's going to be straight and accurate. So if we click and hold, we can go down to the polygonal lasso tool. All right, if we simply click on this, now we again need to make sure that we're on our ribbons layer. We can come down and we can cut a nice little triangle out of the material here. And you'll notice whenever you go to close this in, you should see a little circle that pops up. That little circle on your icon means that you are closing in your shape. So if we go ahead and make that selection, you should now see that this little cutout is there. And the next thing that we're going to do is simply hit the delete key on your keyboard, because it's going to go through and remove that material. All right. So again, we'll go back up here to select, deselect. We now have our fun little ribbon, and that's all good to go. And our next step is we're just going to simply add in some text. We're going to add in a name. All right, to add in any kind of text or type and what have you, we need to use the text tool, which can be found right here. All right, the horizontal text tool is the one that we want to use. Whenever you click on this, there we go. There's a couple of different places that you can find your information. So for example, up here at the top, this is where you would find your different fonts that you can use. And you can set them to a variety of different ways. For this one, I want something that's going to look, fairly similar to what I have here. So I think Times will work. It's a pretty generic font, but it seems to work for a bunch of stuff. Times New Roman. Next up, we've got our font selected. We can use this little scrubber here. We can increase or decrease our font size. We can also do this after we type in our text. So don't worry about it too much just yet. Further along here, we can set up our alignment. Do we want it to be right, left, or left, center, and right, whichever way you want to read it. And then we can choose our color. For choosing colors, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. We can go through and have it selected like this. We can use the color wheel to go through and choose a new color. Or we can come over here to our swatches tools. All right, so you got colors, swatches, gradients, patterns, all kinds of fun stuff to use here. But if we go into swatches, for something like this, we want some, pastel colors, I would think. Grab a nice little yellow, just like that. And you'll see that this changed here. It changed here. This is what color everything is going to be. Another place that you can find all of this information and everything about your text and type is going to be right here after we start typing. So if we click here, and I'm just going to type in my name, Mr. Spake. So if we highlight this, over here we can go through and we can adjust the size of that font, with the scrubber off here to the right, or we can do it up here at the top as well. So, I want something that's going to look good here. If I wanted to change the font, by all means, we can get in here and we can change the font to whatever you would like. And there's a bunch of other different settings that we can get into that we're going to talk about later whenever we get into typography. But with all that done, you can go back to your selection tool. You can move this around, position it up a little bit. And that is the conclusion of number 1. Oh, actually, I forgot real quick. You can change the color still. If you have it selected, you can go through and change your colors. You can do that from your swatches. You can do it from your color palette. However you want to do it, that's totally up to you. But yes, if you have any questions going through this, by all means, let me know. I'll walk through it with you. But I can't help if you don't ask. So if there's anything that you need, let me know. But if not,